So here's a number that should be far more famous than it is. $1, down to less than a penny. That's what it used to cost Franklin Templeton to keep the record of a single money market fund transaction. And that's what it costs now that the record lives on a blockchain. And that cost collapse is exactly what let them drop the minimum investment to $20. So on the 13th of August, a Singapore company most people have never heard of said it was going to do the same kind of thing, with the funds of an American bank that manages more than $2 trillion. Quick one first. We've got a Discord. Come make it yours. A newsletter every Friday in the newsletter channel. Early access, where videos land before they're public. Charts and data for the research. Plus announcements, hackathons, and jobs. Links below. Okay, so let's actually read the thing, because almost nobody did. On the 13th of August, Marketnode, which calls itself Asia Pacific's digital market infrastructure operator, published 4 paragraphs saying it will offer on-chain access to select BNY Investments funds on Stellar for institutional and accredited investors. And hold on to 2 words there, will offer, future tense. Every verb in that release points forward. No fund is named and no launch date is given. And here's what I find genuinely interesting. Nobody else announced it. Stellar's own press page carries over 100 releases, and this isn't one of them. BNY's newsroom has nothing. This came out of Singapore, and only out of Singapore. Now that's not a criticism, it's a calibration, because the substance underneath is real. And 7 weeks earlier, Stellar's CEO, Danelle Dixon, had published a piece whose title basically explains the whole deal. Distribution is the last constraint. So who is Marketnode? Honest answer? They're the plumbing. And the origin story is better than you'd expect, because it starts with one bond. In 2020, Singapore Exchange, Temasek, and HSBC put Asia's first public syndicated digital bond onto a ledger, and it worked. So in January 2021, not 2022, whatever you've read, SGX and Temasek turned that into a joint venture. Then that September, 10 banks signed on as partners, and one of the 10 was BNY Mellon. So the bank everyone's calling a brand new logo this week has been in the room since 2021. That's a 5-year relationship finally reaching a product. Now what were they fixing? Fund orders. Their own white paper describes an investor clicking a button, and that click being converted into a physical fax, faxed back and forth between the fund house and its agents. Settlement took 7 to 10 days. Fundnode got it to 2, and across 2025, it processed 1,496,000 fund orders. And here's the shape of the thing. Dixon used Zelle as her example. The banks didn't each build a payments app. They funded one shared company and embedded it in all of theirs. Marketnode's board is 2 seats Temasek, 2 SGX, 1 HSBC, 1 Euroclear. Every shareholder is also a customer. That's the Zelle pattern, pointed at funds. And on the other side, you've got BNY, which, opened in 1784. And my favorite detail is that Alexander Hamilton wrote its constitution, owned a grand total of 1.5 shares, and the bank then ran 7 years with no charter at all. Today, it holds $62.6 trillion in assets under custody or administration, and manages about $2.2 trillion of its own. And BNY Investments is the asset management half. That's the side in this deal, not the custody bank. Oh, and their internal AI platform? It's called ELIZA, as in Elizabeth Schuyler Hamilton. A bank from 1784 named its language model after its founder's wife. They've also got something like 134 so-called digital employees, with their own logins and human managers, though their own chief financial officer said plainly, the recent headcount decline isn't really about AI yet, which I appreciate. But here's the piece that actually matters. 2 weeks before Singapore, on the 29th of July, BNY launched Digital Transfer Agency, putting fund record keeping itself on chain, aimed at $8.6 trillion across 7.6 million investor accounts. And in that announcement, BNY drew a line almost nobody in crypto draws. So let's go under the hood, because this is where it gets good and where it gets honest. Marketnode runs two things that matter here. Fundnode is the Singapore fund utility. Gateway is the tokenization engine, and it added Stellar back in July 2025, a full year before the BNY announcement, which means Stellar won a mandate here, not exclusivity. Now, why Stellar for a regulated fund? Because the controls sit in the ledger itself, not in a contract somebody has to write. An issuer can require approval before you're even allowed to hold the asset. It can freeze a holding, and it can claw one back. And you have to explicitly opt in first. The thing can't just land in your wallet. The neat part is how that runs in practice. A regulated transfer is one atomic transaction that authorizes both sides, moves the asset, then deauthorizes them again. So it's frozen by default and thawed for exactly the length of one payment. Franklin Templeton says it chose Stellar because it let them meet token-level controls that satisfied the SEC's criteria for a mutual fund on-chain. Okay, now the honest part. Marketnode's release says it will introduce tokens to represent select BNY funds. To represent. And in BNY's own July announcement, the mirror token and digital twin models that have prevailed to date are described as the thing they're moving beyond. So the real question is whether the Stellar record becomes the official register, or a very good reflection of one. And Marketnode's own documentation says payment settlement is currently fiat only, so the fund unit moves on-chain and the money doesn't. Then after 5 years on Stellar, Franklin's own prospectus says there's still no agreement to trade its shares on a secondary market, and that it may never be available. Tokenization solves settlement. It hasn't yet solved market. So where does this go? AI is already in this stack, and not as a slogan. Marketnode's data layer exists to read the mess. Fund orders arriving as faxes and PDFs, loan documents, email instructions. Run through document AI models with humans on the last mile. 2 of their 8 leaders have AI in their job title. Then there's the license, which is really the whole story. Singapore's regulator granted Marketnode a capital market services license in June 2025, dealing in securities and collective investment schemes. And watch what followed. Franklin Templeton in March, CGS International in April, Wisdom Tree in May, BNY in August. 4 asset managers, all downstream of one license. And notice who ends up on those rails together. CGS International traces back to Chinese state ownership. BNY is about as American as a bank gets. Same Singapore rails. That's what a neutral market utility looks like. Meanwhile, real-world assets on Stellar crossed $3 billion in June, growing about 4 times faster than the wider tokenization market. And DTCC, the backbone of U.S. security settlement, has named Stellar one of the first public blockchains for its tokenization service, expected in the first half of 2027. So what do you do with all this? 2 things, and neither costs anything. Read the primary. Marketnode's media center is public, and it's 4 paragraphs. And if you want the mechanism rather than the summary, Stellar's developer docs have a page on controlling access to an asset with flags, with working code in 3 languages. That's the machinery a regulated fund actually uses. Then the takeaway here. Watch 2 things, not the headline. Whether the on-chain record becomes the official register, and whether the cash leg ever moves on-chain too. Until both land, what you've got is a genuinely better pipe, which, honestly, is still a big deal. If this was useful, a like helps more than you'd think, and subscribing keeps them coming. There's a full written breakdown linked below with every source, plus the newsletter sign up and the Discord. Thanks for spending the time with me. See you in the next one.